been in Horry County a good while, I think, and we'll turn it over to Larry.
Well, thank you. Just like Catherine, if you really, a lot of you already know a lot about me because when I was with y'all a lot during the election for the executive committee position, so I'm not going to rehash my personal bona fides or anything very much. If you really want to know, there's a little bit about the biography on the back of my brochure, which is on the table. But if you really want to know a lot about me, go to my Facebook page, look at my notes. I got 14 pages of my testimony on how I came to Jesus Christ on there. That's all you need to know about me if you want to know the deep depths of my background. All right. 4 things. Catherine mentioned, that you as voters and you in educating your neighbors as voters, there's some things that you should really look for in candidates. Well, there's 4 things that I want to point out about my candidates. My motives for running, my qualifications for doing the job, my aspirations, the goals that I have that I want to accomplish when I'm on the job, and also my character. Those 4 things, I think, are the things you really need to concentrate on when you're looking at candidates. Let's start with my motivation for running. I have 3 children, 11 grandchildren, and 1 great-grandson. Every one of them owes tens and tens of thousands of dollars of debt that they have to pay back that they did not create. That burns me up. And I blame myself for being asleep at the wheel all those years. I too am an airborne soldier, 87 airborne, all in there. And I tell you what, it burns me up that I allowed the people that I elected. I went in, I voted in every election I could vote in since I was old enough to register to vote. And I allowed those folks that I elected to go and do wherever they did what they went and did, to do it on their own. Hey, I didn't pay any more attention to what was going on from the time I was 18 and started voting up until just a couple of years ago. And then when I woke up and looked around, I said, you know what I should have been doing? After I voted for those people, I should have been watching them to see what they were doing. Not only that, I should have been watching them to see how they were doing what they were doing. If I had been doing that, I guarantee you if enough of us, those of you that's sitting in this room know exactly what I'm talking about. If enough of us had been following that process over the years, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in now because they wouldn't be doing things the same way that they're doing them now. Catherine touched on it. If you keep sending the same people, and thank God we have a new district, so we're going to start off with a new person for sure in this district. But as politics in general, if you keep sending the same group and type of people to do the politician's job, you're going to keep getting the same results. So I decided in the motivation, I'm going to try to fix in what little way I can the mess I allowed to happen that affects my grandchildren and my great-grandson. I'm going to be in there fighting every day because they don't deserve the mess they're in. Now the next thing is my qualification. I wasn't an officer in the military. Highest rank I ever got to was an E6 Staff Sergeant. I spent right at 11 years, 10 months, and 28 days active duty. All right, like I said, I was an airborne trooper. I served 2 tours in Vietnam, one of them in the 173rd Airborne Brigade. And there's an airborne connection, I guarantee you there is. There's a brotherhood, and you've seen movies about it on TV and stuff, but there's a real brotherhood in our paratrooper family. Now I tell you this also, my qualification, I may have only been a staff sergeant in the United States Army, but as I went through my Army career, every time I got to a new duty station, they never put me doing what I was supposed to be doing when I got there, what my order sent me there to do. I always ended up working on this project, that project, or something. Some of the projects that I'm really privileged to have participated in is I was a staff NCO for the general in charge of administration over in the European Theater on the Warplanes Committee. I was involved in making the contingency warplanes for what would happen if the Soviet Union attacked the West. That was a tremendously challenging assignment. I was also involved in writing certain Army regulations. I spent a lot of time under the new system they had for doing command personnel management inspections, with inspecting the paperwork, the CPMI inspection. I spent a lot of time with the Personnel Records Division, how the Army keeps track of people's records in their military service. And the jobs that I was able to do there and stuff led them to come to me when it came time to rewrite the regulations on how do you keep records. So I helped write Army regulations. They were training their clerks to take care of those records. The clerks weren't doing very well. They still kept making, the records weren't that accurate. And when the clerks were tested a year after they got out of training, they weren't making that good of scores on their annual PMOS testing. Yet, the clerks that I had working for me, they could not find anything wrong with their records. It's perfect scores. So they tagged me to rewrite the training program for U.S. Army Personnel Records clerks. So I did that. I wrote them a new school procedure, a new training. So that's my qualifications. I'm good with figures. I'm good with words and putting thoughts together and making them line up and agree with each other and stuff like that. That's my qualifications. Okay? Then, what are my aspirations? I usually speak without notes, but I've got a little note here I want to read for you. I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to ask you if anybody knows where this comes from. All political power is vested in and derived from the people only. Therefore, they have the right at all times to modify their form of government. Anybody know where this comes from? This is Section 1, Article 1 of the Constitution of the State of South Carolina. Now, how many of you guys, as citizens of South Carolina, feel that you hold all the political power? Are there any of you that feel that way? My goal, you do.
No, the same thing is said in the Declaration of Independence.
My goal is when I get to Columbia, I'm not going to be able to change the political landscape of the state of South Carolina overnight. Won't be able to do it in one term. Probably wouldn't be able to do it if I lived for 20 terms. But guess what? I can change a little bit of it. I can pick on one project at a time, one thing at a time, where things need to be changed from the way they've been being done to a new way of doing it. Okay? That's my goal, is to piece by piece, step by step, start getting the people back in charge of the political process the way our Constitution says they're supposed to be. And then about the ethics or my honesty and all that, I let my actions speak for me there. I don't have to tell you anything about that. Those of you, you know me, you've already made up your mind about that. Those of you that don't know me, ask somebody who does. That's all I'm saying. Okay? Now, I have a couple of minutes left.
You got about 3, yeah.
3 minutes left. Okay, let me mention just a couple of things. We touched on the Constitution of the state of South Carolina. How many of you are aware that the Constitution states that every House member must read and understand that Constitution? How many of you think every House member reads and understands the Constitution of the state of South Carolina? How many of y'all have read the Constitution of the state of South Carolina?
Can't find it.
It is difficult to find. You can't find it in printed form anyway.
You can't find it.
You are an exception, sir. I applaud you. The Constitution of the state of South Carolina that we're currently under was ratified in 1895. There have been 3 published amendments to that Constitution since 1895. I believe one was in 1900, one was in 1905, and one was in 1974. 3 amendments published to that Constitution. There have been 155 other changes to the Constitution that were not published as amendments. Those changes, they simply went into the body of the Constitution, took something out, put something else in, or whatever they did to it, and then they put a little note of the year and the act number and all that authorized them to make that change. But they didn't publish an amendment. Guess what? The Constitution of the state of South Carolina has a procedure to amend the Constitution. How come they've ignored that? Because they're politicians, because they're used to the bureaucratic mindset. So they've taken our Constitution, they've jumbled it all up, they've made changes. It's not the same as it was back in 1895. That's understandable. 155 different times they've done this, and they haven't published amendments on those 155 changes. Now, if you try to sit down and read the Constitution of the state of South Carolina right now, it is very, very confusing. You're really not sure what you read. Lawyers did all that, and they did that so they can guarantee them jobs, so they can tell other people what they just read. Okay? One of the things I want to do as a member of the House is start a movement, and it's going to have to be started with you guys. I want to start a movement that the people of South Carolina put so much pressure on their representatives that we call another constitutional convention, and we simply take the Constitution that we have right now. I don't want to, reinvent the wheel. I just want to say, let's take the Constitution we have right now, let's rewrite it into language that the average citizen can understand, let's put that amendment process in there, and then let's, by golly, amend it from that point on, not this behind the door hokey-pokey changing. For example, 2010, you guys remember voting on a deal on the ballot about the age of consent for a young girl to have sex was 14 years old in our Constitution? That was in the Constitution written in 1895. In 2010, they had us vote that out and put in some kind of little stipulation in their sexual perversion laws or whatever they were, that means most of the time the age of consent is 16 now. But the law they wrote, it isn't always age 16, only most of the time. Okay? Now,
All right, Larry, your time is about up.
I'll talk to you more afterwards. Really, if you want to get the same results, keep electing politicians. If you want something different, I'm not different.